President. Thank you very much.
Viva Cabo Verde! Viva America! Viva America! Viva Cabo Verde!
Cape Verde consists of 10 arid volcanic islands, mostly mountainous, in the North Atlantic Ocean. Uninhabited prior to discovery by the Portuguese, they were colonized and settled in 1462. Lying 380 miles off the coast of West Africa, for 200 years, these islands were a transatlantic crossroad for the slave trade and ship supplies. Descended from Europeans, mostly Portuguese, and slaves from West Africa, half of Cape Verde's predominantly Catholic population live on the island of Santiago, seat of the national capital, Praia. The people speak Creole, the native language, and Portuguese is used officially. Winning independence in 1975, Cape Verdeans have developed unique cultural traditions in music, language, and folklore during the 500 years as a colony. Situated in the Sahel, an arid belt stretching from mainland West Africa to the islands, this land of scarce rainfall creates a struggle for survival for these people who are dependent on agriculture. For over 400 years, the islands have suffered devastating cycles of drought, famine, and starvation. In this century alone, over 100,000 have died from starvation. The alternative for many from villages and rural areas continues to be immigration. Development today is hampered by lack of water, poor transportation, a harsh environment, and centuries of colonial neglect. Now entering the second decade of a severe and prolonged drought, Cape Verde, the hardest hit country in the Sahel, and mainland African countries in the region are covered by vast areas of arid and desert zones. Despite efforts by governments and people in the region, advancing desert and drought threaten their very existence. This regional tragedy has become an international crisis. Arriving at the United Nations, Aristides M. Pereira, President of the Republic of Cape Verde, makes his first state visit to the United States in 1983 to address the General Assembly on the crisis in the Sahel. He appeals for regional assistance from the international community in restoring the ecological balance and achieving self-sufficiency in food production. President Pereira addresses the 38th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations on behalf of the heads of state of the member countries of the Interstate Committee for Drought Control in the Sahel.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, drought and desertification are today the principal causes of the evils afflicting large areas of our planet. More than 1/3 of arable land throughout the world is situated in parts of the world affected by drought. Insofar as concerns the African continent, the area of the arid and semi-arid zones and their expansion is alarming. At present, this area...
Born in 1922, President Pereira is an elder of Cape Verde's war for independence. He has served as president since 1975 of the young Republic of Cape Verde, which follows a strict policy of non-alignment. Although the smallest and one of the poorest African nations, the Republic of Cape Verde and President Pereira are emerging as major forces in African affairs regionally in the Sahel and internationally.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, in Cape Verde, we are proud of the fact that the international community, although our country is a small one and has been devastated by drought, judged us worthy of benefiting from significant assistance. It is thanks to this aid that drought, which has persisted since...
Today, Cape Verde receives major economic and food assistance. As a result, mass starvation no longer exists in the islands. People are Cape Verde's greatest resource. They are being assisted with technical aid and money from international organizations, the United States, and other nations. Agricultural development, soil, and water conservation are top priorities. Projects are underway to upgrade basic human services and health, to improve elementary education and industry. For these development challenges, Cape Verde also looks to the vital contributions from Cape Verdean immigrant communities overseas in building economic and agricultural self-sufficiency.
A paz, o desenvolvimento e a segurança internacional. Muito obrigado.
Concluding his address, President Pereira leaves the United Nations en route to New England, home of the largest population of Cape Verdeans outside the islands. Cape Verdeans began arriving in New England before the American Revolution. Yankee whalers coming to Cape Verde for supplies and crews provided the first avenue of escape from these isolated islands. By the early 1800s, Cape Verdean whalers and seamen were settling in New Bedford, Massachusetts, the whaling capital of the world during the 19th century. By 1900, the first major wave of immigration was underway. Thousands of Cape Verdeans, women now as well as men, followed the whalers to southern New England to pursue the economic opportunities. They worked on the waterfronts, in the cranberry bogs, and textile mills throughout the region. Packets, Cape Verdean owned and operated by 1905, carried people back and forth to New England. The $20 fare for one bought passage on a perilous 2,800-mile voyage lasting 30 to 40 days. John Gomes, born in 1901, a veteran of 12 transatlantic trips, describes his experience.
I come to this country in August 1919. I come from Bravo. I take a boat in Bravo, Volante, the name of the boat, and take me to New Bedford. The 32 days of trip from Bravo to New Bedford. But I was seasick from one port to the other.
He joined other Cape Verdeans who worked in the cranberry bogs in the towns of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. By 1910, most of the region's crop was harvested by Cape Verdeans. Quota restrictions in 1921 and 24 slowed the immigration flood of Cape Verdeans. Packets carrying seasonal migrant workers and regular passengers arrived in the spring before the cranberry season, returning to Cape Verde after the fall harvest. Briefly halted during World War II, the packets resumed the role as a lifeline to relatives and friends in the islands, while preserving a strong cultural identity for Cape Verdeans in America. Goods and money sent back by them to the islands often meant the difference between life and death. Today, over 150 years after Cape Verdeans began arriving, small boats taking on cargo bound for Cape Verde from docks in Providence and New Bedford are still a common sight. These goods and money sent by Cape Verdeans in America and newer Cape Verdean communities around the world annually provide over 40% of Cape Verde's gross domestic product. President Pereira's first stop in New England is Massachusetts, home of the largest Cape Verdean population in America. The president and his delegation are greeted by the Consul General and leaders of Massachusetts Cape Verdean community.
Avante com o jogo.
The Roxbury community in Boston, Massachusetts is America's fastest growing area for new immigration, drawing people from Cape Verde as well as communities in Europe and mainland Africa. Relaxed immigration laws in 1965 reopened America's door to Cape Verdeans. St. Patrick's Church is the center of the new immigrants' religious, community, and family life. Seeking economic opportunities like those at the beginning of the century, many filled the need for labor in small businesses, factories, and hospitals.
Oh, wait!
As the numbers continue to grow in Roxbury, identifiable Cape Verdean landmarks have already been established. At the state capitol, Governor Michael S. Dukakis welcomes President Pereira to the Commonwealth.
I just explained to the President that I speak some Greek, I speak some Spanish, I speak a little French, but my Portuguese is very limited, for which I apologize. As I think all of you know, we have a very large number of people who either come from the Cape Verde Islands or trace their origins to the Cape Verde Islands, and they're good citizens of this state, and they have been an important part of our community for many years.
State Senator Royal Bowling introduces President Pereira to the Senate.
My colleagues, it's a pleasure to bring before you today the President of the Cape Verde Islands, a freedom fighter that was responsible for the liberation of his country, and I ask him to say a few words to this august body today.
Na verdade, trago comigo uma mensagem do povo de Cabo Verde.
I bring with me a message from the people of Cape Verde, and a message that reaches back into the American history. It is a message of the spirits uniting our two peoples. A spirit of self-determination, of independence, and of hope for our futures.
President Pereira's next stop in New England is Rhode Island, the second largest Cape Verdean concentration in America. Immigrants stepping off the boat at the nearby waterfront in Providence at the beginning of the century lived in old wooden framed houses stretching along Wickenden and South Main Streets in the Fox Point section of the city. First the men came, working on the waterfront or in neighboring mill towns. They saved, sometimes for years before sending for wives and loved ones. Foreigners alone in a strange land, greenhorns as Cape Verdeans were called, preserved the language, music, feast days, and religious traditions of the islands. The growing community looked to each other in times of need. Disability and death benefits were paid to members of the Santental Society, a fraternal organization founded in 1934. Many Cape Verdeans began and continue as stevedores. Formed in 1933, Local 1329 of the International Longshoremen's Association was a milestone in securing safety and benefits on the waterfront. Opposite the Fox Point community across Narragansett Bay is the Port of Providence and the shipyard. Longshoreman Antone Souza, born in 1912, still works here as one of the last links to 4 generations of Cape Verdeans on the waterfront.
Well, we started this, and now we are in the 3rd and 4th generation of Cape Verdeans, which they very fortunate. We're organized now. We have a wonderful union, good benefits, and they really made a good job of it. Well, when I started, I was a young fellow around 16, 17, which that's about 55 years ago. And I'm the only one left from the old 2nd generation that's here, which I'm overdue on my retirement. One of these days I'll have to retire.
Around the world.
Oh, I
The Fox Point community of Cape Verdeans was gradually disbanded when urban renewal in the 1960s reclaimed the neighborhood. Structurally sound houses were restored, and Cape Verdeans moved out to suburbia if possible, or to other parts of the city. One remaining landmark from this thriving community is the Faith Community Parish, the first Cape Verdean Protestant church in the country. Arriving at the state capitol, President Pereira is greeted by Governor Joseph Garahi and leaders of the Cape Verdean community.
Very well respected.
American descendants of early Cape Verdean immigrants have entered many skilled and professional fields, including commerce, education, and government. They are an important link in securing development assistance for the young Republic of Cape Verde.
Muitos dos nossos irmãos emigraram para o vosso estado com pouco mais do que...
Many of our brothers and sisters emigrated to your state with little but their vision of the future and an independent determination to excel. They showed great courage and fortitude in leaving behind family and familiar surroundings to forge a thriving and prosperous community on your shores. We are proud of their accomplishments.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to come and visit.
Pawtucket, Rhode Island is America's second largest new immigrant community after Roxbury, Massachusetts. To accommodate the large number of new arrivals, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Providence opened a new parish, Immaculate Heart of Mary. At Tolman High School, warm greetings are extended to President Pereira and his wife by the new and old Cape Verdean communities.
Seja bem-vindo à nossa América. Anjos da guarda que te acompanha, Senhor Presidente, Espírito Santo que te bem ilumina. Anjos de guia que te bem guiar. Cada passada que eu te descendo. Viva Cabo Verde! Viva América! Viva América! Viva Cabo
Verde! President Pereira returns to Massachusetts and the city of New Bedford, the spiritual heart of Cape Verdean culture and home of the first institutions of Cape Verdean American life. In 1916, these men started the Cape Verdean Beneficent Association, the first Cape Verdean American fraternal organization. The Cape Verdean Ultramarine Band Club, formed in 1917, continues as a popular addition to festivities and celebrations throughout New England's Cape Verdean communities.
Detail, head, pen, right shoulder, hold.
The Honor Guard of the only Cape Verdean American Veterans Association in America welcomes President Pereira to New Bedford. He places a memorial wreath on the monument to Cape Verdean American soldiers. Established in 1946, the Cape Verdean Vets and the Ladies Auxiliary are major sponsors of patriotic, educational, and charitable activities in Greater New Bedford. Members of the Cape Verdean Women's Social Club, representing the islands of Cape Verde, join Cape Verdean seniors and members of community organizations in welcoming the presidential delegation. From Acushnet Avenue, the heart of New Bedford's Cape Verdean neighborhood, the people have continued the proud traditions of mutual assistance for the community and islands for over 150 years. Other Cape Verdean landmarks include a public school named for respected lawyer and community leader Alfred J. Gomes, and Our Lady of the Assumption Church, the first national parish outside Cape Verde. New Bedford is a fitting home for the Ernestina, queen of the Cape Verdean packet trade, now docked in the harbor. The Ernestina was first launched in 1894 as the F.E.M. Morrissey in Essex, Massachusetts. She served 3 decades as a Grand Banks fishing schooner. The Morrissey was refitted under Captain Bob Bartlett in 1924 and embarked on 20 years of famous Arctic expeditions. In 1948, Henrique Mendes of Cape Verde bought the vessel and renamed it the Ernestina. The longest-lived sailing ship in the Cape Verdean packet trade, for 30 years she carried passengers and cargo between Cape Verde and America. In 1982, the Ernestina was restored with contributions from both sides of the Atlantic and sailed back to the United States, a gift from the people of Cape Verde to America. Mayor Brian Lawler accompanies President Pereira on his visit to the historic vessel. The President is greeted by the ship's captain, Dan Moreland, and Laura Pyers from Friends of the Ernestina Morrissey Committee.
Thank you very much for coming aboard again.
Uma fotografia de Ernestina quando chegou a Newport, ano passado, dos amigos de Ernestina Morrissey. Muito obrigado.
The Ernestina is now being readied for her 4th seafaring career as a sailing school and floating heritage state park. She will be used for educational, cultural, and community development.